Well, I would like to make a connection with a forum the East Forum that was organized last year. We were talking about sustainability, and several people thought that sustainability was just an environmental problem. Of course, it's not. It's a financial, it's an economic, it's environmental, but it's also a social problem. I think that we have seen over the last few years the food crisis, the energy crisis, the financial crisis, the economic crisis, and now the risk of a social crisis. So this is really about the overall organization of our system, and of course is putting us before huge problems of sustainability now in terms of social sustainability. We have seen that youth, young people, have been especially hit by this crisis. So UniCredit asked some of them what they would like to get out of this forum. So we will see now few interviews with young people.
Ciao, sono Manuel, vorrei sapere se nei prossimi anni verranno investiti più soldi, più fondi nella ricerca e nei corsi di formazione, che sono una cosa importante per il lavoro.
Se i soldi della ricerca non vanno all'università e tutti i soldi che verranno dati dallo Stato non vanno all'università, dove vuoi che vengano sfruttati? Per uscire dalla crisi bisogna puntare sui giovani, oppure non c'è altra via d'uscita, credo.
Quali sono le strategie per uscire da questa crisi?
Sono studente di economia, sto al primo anno e volevo sapere insomma qual è la fascia d'età che soffrirà di più la crisi di questo momento, di questi anni.
Questa è una cosa che ci interessa soprattutto perché noi stiamo comunque per entrare in un mercato del lavoro, tra qualche anno toccherà anche a noi e vogliamo sapere in che situazione andremo a trovarci.
Per esempio sarebbe interessante sapere quali sono secondo loro le strategie per andare oltre questa crisi, per ridurre il livello della disoccupazione. Sembra una domanda banale, ma è la domanda centrale.
Come uscire da questo momento di crisi?
Quello che loro propongono in termini economici, in termini di riforme per poter riportare la crescita e per poter ridurre l'indice della disoccupazione.
Visto che siete riuniti tutti quanti, come secondo voi si potrebbe vincere questa crisi economica? Approfitto per farvi questa domanda, essendo uno studente.
Perché se voi siete economisti non avete previsto prima, siccome si fanno le previsioni di bilancio, le indagini sul mercato, perché arrivare al problema per poi trovare la soluzione e soprattutto perché pensare più al problema e non alle soluzioni?
Well, tough questions indeed. Why did economists didn't foresee the crisis? And actually some of them did, but they were not understood, or I don't know. This is one of the good questions for you. Let's have finally a brief focus on Italy. If I may have, se posso avere le altre slide, stanno arrivando. Italy, as we already mentioned, was a special case because the unemployment rate didn't increase very much. And we can compare the Italian situation, the current crisis is the blue line with the previous crisis, and we see that GDP is growing less than in the past, employment is still low compared to the minimum of the crisis, and labor productivity is going up, but not very much. It's true that during the crisis, Italy saved a lot of jobs. In fact, the unemployment rate raised, but not very much, because Cassa Integrazione Guadagni protected a lot of people from losing the job. And as Stefano said, mainly people with temporary contracts were pushed out. But there was also a big reduction in the labor utilization. So the number of hours per employment decreased. And now we can see that the situation is changing. with the recovery, there is an increase in labor utilization, there is an increase in short-term contracts, and the real question here is this going to affect positively this time also the standard jobs? Italy has still a very low employment rate compared to other countries. And actually the improvement in employment rate that we had in the past was mainly due to the reduction of people, the population. And on the other hand, it's true that we are still back, in a sense, to the level of 1996 and 1997, as you can see in this chart. So we lost almost 10 years, 12 years of improvements. Then Italy has another particular problem with women employment. Female are very, I would say, weak in terms of employment rate, and in general, especially in the south, the inactivity rate is really very, very high. I think that is around 40%, if I'm not wrong. What I call the purgatory of provisional employment, for those who enter into the job 5 years ago, this was before the crisis, after 5 years, only 50% got a permanent job. So which means that the transition from a temporary job to a long-term job is very long, and this, of course, has an impact in the overall life planning. Stefano has already introduced this net, the people, young people not in employment, education, or training. We have 2.1 million young people in these conditions, and what is really scaring, in my view, is that most of them have been net over the last 3 years, which means that there is a persistence in this situation, which of course is a risk of social exclusion. So these are just a few data for Italy. Now we can open the floor for questions, comments. Let's collect 3 or 4, and then we will give the floor to our panelists. Who wants to take the floor? There is a question here. Over there, please introduce yourself, and then short questions or comments.
Yes,
Thank you.
good morning. I'm Anna Biondi of the International Labour Organization, and I found it very interesting. I think that a couple of issues, certainly, I think that we need to start looking indeed at the macroeconomic pictures in general, because we cannot just look at active labor market policies in discussing a situation where we need to respond on a larger scale. And certainly, I wouldn't want, as much as we need to give the answers to the young people, to create a war between young and old workers, because in the end they are both paying the price. We know that the bulk of resources has gone to neither one, but has gone to the financial market. So I think that we need to discuss where we need to reinvest, where we make sure that society, in the end, in order to maintain democracy, need to reinvest in people. Let's also look, following what Dr. Braga was saying, that certainly we want to see development in developing countries, but once we see, for example, export processing zones where there is no wage policy, or there is no taxation that goes to developing countries in order to create development, to create those schools, I think that we need indeed to look for a new policy coherence for sustainability. So I think that at least in this first picture, so we should look certainly at active labor market policies, but including also the bigger picture of macroeconomic policies, monetary policy, fiscal policies, and also what we invest in social protection. Let's not make just a little war between young and older workers, because as also Mr. Scarpetta was saying, in reality what we have seen in the United States is that in the end that employment for older people means that people cannot meet ends, so I think that we need to look at this, and of course afterwards I will say that the ILO has also with its labor standards an important role to play in this one. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Piero Cipollone over there. No, yes.